Hello, my name is Liana Kersner. And
And we're doing that, are we?
yes, I have hijacked the show. No, my name is Captain Dirk, and I decided to ask Liana to have a discussion with me about the movie Cuties because, well, I love a dumpster fire. I love a train wreck. I love watching the train wreck. I love the aftermath of that train wreck. And so I figured maybe just being able to play a catch, a game of catch with somebody about this.
I've already been called a pedophile enabler over this already on Twitter. 9:30 in the morning, like last Thursday. Boom! Guy called me a pedophile enabler for saying everyone is wrong about this movie. You can't even say everyone's wrong without being called a pedophile enabler by someone who hasn't seen the movie.
So then what is your take on how do you feel being a pedophile enabler?
How does one feel being a pedophile enabler? I mean, that I think is in a nutshell the absurdity of the whole controversy surrounding the movie, right? Like there's the movie and there's the controversy surrounding the movie, which the controversy surrounding the movie is a bunch of people who kind of lean left, kind of social justice-y, giving the movie way too much credit, in my opinion, and then people who have not even seen the movie but hate it because of a trailer attacking the people who are defending it a little too hard. And then, of course, the irony of the positions that these two factions have on everything else of this sort being the polar opposite. That's real. That has been absurd. That's why I wanted to have a look at it. I actually asked my YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter audiences whether they wanted me to basically watch it, to tell them what it is so they don't have to watch it. And everybody's like, yes, please save me. So that's why I did it. The movie itself was, you said off air you found it like frustrating.
Yes.
And I agree with you on that because it could have been much better than it was.
So the way that I describe this movie, it's like Amy ruins everything and then skips rope.
Which isn't wrong. Okay, though I would say that Amy's mom and that creepy auntie lady ruin everything through the kid, and then Ami skips rope.
Okay, is it Ami or Amy?
Well, did you watch it in the French or the English version?
French.
Yeah, okay. It's well, they say Ami, which her full name is Aminata. I believe they say it in a couple places. But
Okay.
It's Ami. People saying it as Amy. It's spelled Amy. So I think a lot of the names are puns in the game. You know, the aunt is just la tante, which is just the aunt in French. The priest guy is just named in El Hajj, which is just a guy who's been to the Hajj. So the names are really on the nose. Angelica's brother is just named Angelica's brother. So the characters are, I think, tropes instead of fully formed characters, which is partially what drove me crazy about the whole thing. But yeah, doesn't matter. Amy, Ami. I'm in Canada, so we have to use the French pronunciations for French things, but you're not in Canada land, so you have more freedom.
Oh my God. Liana, all this freedom that I have. It is my cross to bear to be able to allow you to have these freedoms too. Okay. So you're welcome.
So you'll say Amy and I'll say Ami, and then we'll be bilingual.
I'll just say Ami.
Ami,
just to make
okay.
it easier. Yeah.
It's Ami. Accent on the second syllable, but go for it. Yeah.
So maybe I'll explain a bit of like my frustrations with this film then. So let's remove the focus from the dirty dancing in this film and just talk about it as a story itself. So like Ami gets involved with the cuties who are dancers, and these girls have a goal. They have something in mind that they're trying to work towards.
Right.
And then here struts Ami, Vince McMahon style, and kicks Yasmin out, helps
Oh, well,
lead to kick Yasmin out.
you left out the part where they hit her in the head with a rock. that was the thing. Like,
Well, I'll ignore that part though.
all
Like,
good friendships start with beaning somebody in the head with a rock so hard you recognize them the next day by the mark from where you beamed them with the rock.
look, my best friends beat the shit out of me with rocks. Okay, I get it. No, so Ami comes in and butts herself into the Cuties.
Right? After
And
they hit her with a rock.
correct me if I'm wrong, but Ami was the one that was introducing how to do the dirty dancing to the Cuties. Isn't that right?
Yeah, because she was the one with a cell phone. Like, she steals the cell phone from an uncle or something like that. It was
Her cousin.
her cousin. Okay, cousin. And like, okay, he knew it was missing, but he didn't cancel the phone. I don't find my phone, doesn't exist in France, I guess. But so she has unfettered access to the internet, and she somehow finds the most ratchet, skanky twerking videos in existence. Like, I've seen a lot of twerking videos because I grew up in an Afro-Caribbean neighborhood where we actually learned what was called whining and ticking, like Afro-Caribbean dance. We actually learned it as part of school curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And that was some ratchet twerking videos. Like the video where the woman's got the thong and the bare ass and it's like one butt muscle is twitching. I'm like, that's impressive, but
Look, I mean, going into 4chan, I've seen so many Ricardo videos.
Yeah.
People will know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so this is all Ami's fault. She teaches the rest of the Cuties how to do this. The girls listen to them. Okay, I'm not going to victim blame here. This is Ami's fault. Now,
here's okay. What I don't understand is the whole thing
Yeah.
is ostensibly leading up to this dance competition, but there's also the B plot of her father's child bride's second wedding, right?
Yes.
And so that's running in the background, and the forced labor Ami is forced into by creepy aunt lady. But they do a preliminary performance for the dance competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't they screen that shit out before they got on? Like, are we supposed to believe they changed the dance since then? Or did they all go, oh no, this is good, girls? And then when everybody else started booing, the judges started going, oh, we're gonna boo too. Like, what? No, we didn't let this in. So it's the dance competition's fault.
The judges were saving face here. But no, here's the thing though. So yeah, the judges did approve of what the girls were doing, which is awful, terrible. I don't like it. Now hang on though. Let me finish this here.
Frustration is boiling over. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm so upset about this.
Yeah.
So the Cuties end up kicking Ami out because she's being a jerk.
Yeah, she didn't show up for the preliminaries.
What a dick. Okay. Now you don't show up. Okay. You get kicked out of the Cuties because you are the betrayer. Now, in order to get back into the Cuties, you shove Yasmin into the water, which then forces the Cuties to have to allow you back into them. So that way you are now dancing with them. You are dancing with the stars on this contest here.
Yeah.
And while the judges and while the audience is booing the Cuties, all of a sudden, brain blast. Oh my God, I'm crying. I got to get out of here. I abandoned the Cuties. And what consequence do I get out of this? Where's the part in the film where the Cuties beat the shit out of her for screwing them over with the competition?
Yeah, that's what I mean about the last third just being a complete hot mess and me going, what is going on here? Also, the fact that being booed on a stage was apparently more traumatizing to Ami than the embarrassment of putting her vagina on the internet. That blew my mind too.
Her cousin is now guilty of child pornography. So where's the resolution
his phone?
in this?
Yeah, if they find it. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, that's what I thought. I got sucked into that nice ending of her skipping rope and dressing like a normal kid and jumping higher and higher and higher and higher. Okay, we all feel the music, film technique, mindfuckery, right? But then I'm like, wait a minute. Dad still has a second wife that looked like she might be twice Ami's age. Might be. She might be 18. We don't know. She looked
Yeah.
pretty young under that cheesecloth thing, her ghost costume. She's still in a polygamous household. Her mom's still miserable. She's still a pariah for multiple reasons, and she might still get forced into some sort of marriage against her will. Where's the win here? Because
The
her
win,
aunt is still planning to marry her off in a couple years because now she's had her period, right?
the win is being able to jump rope.
Oh, I get it. So all the twerking was just sort of working up to jumping.
Yeah, that's what everything about this led to. Okay, don't worry about what happens when Ami goes back home and has to confront her father.
Because she missed the wedding. Because her mother
Exactly.
told her she could,
Mhm.
breaking with their incredibly strict, African Islamic tradition. The ending makes no sense, and that's why I'm like, what? Why do people think this is brilliant? This is a shining example of how film festival crowds get so, when you're in a theater in a film festival. Toronto's the Toronto International Film Festival, right? I've been to the festival. They are environments of a whole bunch of people smelling each other's farts,
Oh
literally
yeah.
and figuratively. And you can't judge a movie the way a regular person does in a theater when the creator's like right there. They're sitting in the front row. They say, "Hey, thanks. I hope you like my movie" at the beginning, and then they come up at the end. It's an artificial situation, right? They have the opportunity to prime the audience to be prepared for what to expect. And so these film festival audiences were primed to accept this idea of, oh, isn't it terrible how society sexualizes children? My question is, did we really need a movie to tell us that? Most people already know that.
We could have just gotten a book that nobody reads.
Well, and that, I don't think that wasn't what the movie was about for me, even. I don't know about you, but I found myself, because the way they juxtaposed the scenes in the first 2/3 of the film was interesting. The fact that they went from this hypersexualized twerking stuff to a scene where she has to deal with the horror that's going on in her very traditional mom's being forced to cook for, dad's child bride and her 40 friends kind of thing. That I found myself constantly going, if me as a kid or another little girl was stuck in one of those extremes, I'd pick the twerking. It's less harmful, right? You're not being married off to a guy twice your age by twerking. You're not being essentially raped when you're 13 by twerking. And that's what the alternative extreme future is. I would have preferred if both things, like at the end, they were like, wait, no, we're just going to act our age and dance actually well. Because one of the big disappointing things for me is after all that ramp up, they didn't dance very well. The routine was sloppy. It wasn't together. It was all over the place. It wasn't well performed at that competition. So I didn't know if they were being booed because of the sexual stuff or they were being booed because they were just bad. Like, it wasn't a
They
good
were booed
routine.
because of the sexual stuff. Like,
I,
you were seeing like a mother closing her
yeah,
son's.
yeah,
Yeah.
avert his eyes, yeah. But I was like, this is bad. Like, for all the thing about how many kids, and I saw in other scenes, these girls can dance. They came into this being able to do those moves. You cannot teach a girl to dance like that. There's muscle memory involved. You can't do it in the time that you have with an independent film. So this idea that they were taught to do those moves for the movie, I don't buy that. Those girls move just scary well. And that's what most people got out of it, of, oh, it's kind of awkward. Oh, they're children. They don't really know what they're doing. All that's true. But I would have preferred, they moderate in the dancing and get rewarded for being age appropriate, because then the mother finally saying, you don't have to go to the wedding, and she leaves her husband's ass the way the religious guy told her she could, then Ami's got some hope, right? The dance
Yeah.
performance redeems her after the VJJ Instagram thing, and after a boy smacks her ass in the middle of class and somehow it's her fault. That was weird too to me. Oh, but she did this, so you can smack her ass in front of everybody? But,
And then
you
she
know,
stabs a guy.
you saw that coming though. Like that's the other weird thing. Yeah, everybody's on the sex. That girl's out of control, violent. Like how many fights were there in that? She went after a girl that had to be 4 years older than her. That's
Yeah.
insane. And you know, no surprise, there's violence at home. When she gets into trouble at school, she's certainly in trouble. Her mother's solution is to smack her in the face twice and then try to get demons out of her through that cold water thing, you know, and then the kid starts going crazy and they just leave her there. Apparently, like that was what?
Yeah, they're really, to me, there was no redemption for the character either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I ended up liking the character less and less the more that I went through with the movie, and I've felt less sorry for her towards the end too.
How'd you feel about Angelica? The what my Twitch audience named Mini AOC. The friend in the building. we've taken to calling her Mini AOC because of the glasses. But what did you think of her? Because to me, she was the most legitimately tragic character in the whole thing.
Why is that?
Because she has no parents. Like she has parents, but she never sees them.
They're never
You
around.
know,
Yeah.
they're never around. She's being raised by her brother who doesn't give a fuck. And then, you know, the reason this competition is so important to her is she thinks that if she can just do this well, her parents will come and see something and like see her. I believe that a girl who was abandoned that way at such a tender age would act out the way she does. I mean, when kids are abandoned by their parents that way, girls, that's exactly what they do. They do a shortcut to adulthood to show, you know, maturity. And what's the fastest way to fake that you're growing up? Act like a tart, right?
Yeah.
You know, slut shaming, you know, aside, that's what girls do. That was very believable to me. And I found myself in multiple times just kind of feeling like the movie was about the wrong kid, because that story was more meaningful. Now, I want to get somebody else's feedback on this. I felt that part of that was because it was a mistake to use kids with absolutely zero acting experience. Because certain big scenes just didn't land because they were awkward and not well acted.
Yeah, so I don't know about the acting for the film. Bear in mind, though, I mean, I have a Shudder account. I can only say so much about acting and good acting in the first place. But um, Count Dankula did a video about this movie.
Oh,
And
yeah?
yeah, he was like, this was so bad to him that he actually said, yeah, this thing should be banned.
Wait,
And
the guy who taught his dog to do a Nazi salute thought this should be banned?
yes.
See, this is the problem with the whole controversy surrounding this video.
So let me explain the reasoning,
Yeah.
though. His reasoning, though, is that if it violates somebody's rights, then that crosses the line for him. He believes that the actors were not able to consent to what they were doing, and therefore
Neither did the dog. Sorry to interrupt, but like, what the? You're blowing my mind here. This is seriously it. This is the argument.
that was his argument. Yes. And look, I don't care what you say. I think the Nazi pug video was fucking hilarious. I didn't care about that.
I'm Jewish, and members of my family were really, really upset by that video. Like, really upset. I don't think that people getting upset are a reason to ban the video.
Yeah.
I do find it strange that somebody who just wouldn't just apologize and wouldn't take his lumps, fought something that was deliberately offensive, is saying that something else should be banned on a harm principle that is kind of unproven. I don't see I don't see harm here. precisely because they are we have had movies where kids portray sexualized characters before. Jodie Foster in Taxi Driver is the big one, right? France has a history of this stuff, specifically on the movie Lolita. I remember that came out when I was a teenager and it was a whole shitstorm, and she was 14, right? I don't see the kids are not performing sex acts in this movie. They're dancing. And to me, saying this is somehow directly harming children is saying doing a live action version of Lord of the Flies is harming boys because you're simulating violence. You know, we have to do like and like here. The kids aren't doing things that they know are sexual. They are doing things they think are pretty. And that's an important distinction in terms of what's going in the minds of these kids. Now, the problem is that girls that do this in real life, they don't understand the signals they're sending, right? They don't understand that means sex, because they don't understand sex yet. They have this, you know, they showed that weird fascination with that 14-year-old boy who thought they were gross and wanted them to get away, but they just kept bugging him about it. They don't have, their bodies aren't there yet, right? Like they're not producing the hormones that require that. So at least they know through this experience, this is not acceptable. The problem is there are a lot of girls out there who think it is acceptable because there are no parents around like there are in the movies, you know? So there's no nudity. There's no, except, you know, if you want to say that one scene where the girl's underwear is exposed goes too far, okay, maybe. But camera angles, how is that harming the girl? You know?
To give my perspective with it, I was not okay with what I saw.
Oh, to be clear, I wasn't okay either.
Yeah.
I'm coming at this from the guy that did the Nazi pug video thinks this should be banned.
Yeah.
Yeah. That blew my mind. So, okay, so let's set that aside and move on to the not okay, because I agree with you. There were things I was not okay with.
Yeah. The movie felt like another shitty Lifetime movie. But then once the Dirty Dancing became incorporated into the story, that's when I became like I was like, no, I don't want this, because I'm seeing these girls do things that I would see a person, like a stripper, do to try to entice me to give her money.
Right.
And that's really where I was drawing a line, made worse by having the actors looking at the fucking cameras.
See, and this is why I think it's good from my point of view to have a male opinion here, because that was one of the things I was thinking about while I was watching it, that it's got to be a totally different experience for a guy seeing this and having camera work that is tailor-made to invoke a particular reaction in a particular audience. They're subverting the male gaze to deliberately make men uncomfortable. And this is where I think they actually made an artistic mistake, because they were making men uncomfortable in a way that men should feel uncomfortable. Bless you. You know what I'm saying? You should feel uncomfortable. It's good you felt uncomfortable there. It went too far in that. They would have made their point with about 60% less sexy music video stuff. You know what I'm saying? So
what if, and by the way, actually, while I'm thinking about it, there was another video that's been going around of a guy who was arguing that the point was to turn people on. Like, he was
really
Yeah, like he was legitimately arguing that the point of what they were shooting was to make men go, "Oh, yeah, she's kind of hot."
Well,
So while that's a different perspective than what you or I were getting from this, but he's not going to be the only person that's doing it either.
he's saying it in more coarse terms, but essentially saying the same thing, right? I mean, the whole point was these girls are mimicking things in music videos. Like I said, and I'm saying this as somebody who's gone through it.
Mm-hmm.
You pick up a lot of things just from the atmosphere, right? That you think, oh, she's doing this because this makes her pretty, because you have no understanding of sexy, right? And that's the whole problem. That's one of the themes they were trying to confront in this movie. I don't think they did it well. And the reason I don't think they did it well is they didn't do nearly enough character development with the main characters. You don't know nearly enough for sure what's going on in Ami's head or Angelica's, or, you know, the other two girls who might as well not have names. Sorry, there are three girls. The blonde
Mm-hmm.
girl, who gives a shit about the blonde girl? She's barely in it, right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't spend enough time really getting into the nuts and bolts of the emotional journey of why these girls are making the choices they do. The film makes the mistake that a lot of the stuff that they're claiming is bad makes, which is women just do this stuff because they do this stuff. They don't delve into why. And that's why I think it could have made a much more impactful point with less. Because like after that scene midway where they do the music video Instagram style shoot, but you don't know that's what's going on until the end of it, and so you spend the whole time going, is anybody what? Like, you immediately look over your shoulder making sure nobody's seeing you do it. I know I did. I wanted to make sure nobody was seeing me. I was the only one in the house, but I didn't want to get caught watching this stuff. By the end, the big dance at the end that everybody's so horrified from has no impact, right? It's just more. They peak too early. They should have hinted at it and then at the end did that. Once they did that music video scene, there was nowhere to go except uncomfortable.
What was the point behind the music video scene?
Well, the I think, and this was another artistic mistake, that you were supposed to believe that this was them shooting an Instagram music video for likes, which they cut away and she's watching herself on Instagram on the cell phone, right? But how do a bunch of 11-year-old girls get camera technique that good when, like 2 days ago, she didn't know how to work a cell phone to get, usable video of a guy in a bathroom?
Yeah.
What you were supposed to believe, you had to suspend disbelief too much, right? And that was the problem. It wasn't shaky. It wasn't almost there. They were trying to do a music video with 11-year-olds. And again, it was sort of and you never saw one of the girls holding the camera to let you know, oh, they're making this video themselves. That's where I think they were leaning too far into making the audience, which in that case was presumed male, but making women uncomfortable in a different way. But they were leaning too far into making the audience uncomfortable. And that's a technique, that's a tactic that in a film festival full of privileged, fairly wealthy hipster or SJW people works really well. When it ends up on a platform like Netflix or in the general population, where people don't want to ask difficult questions about art, they just want to be told what's okay for me to do and what's not okay for me to do. Don't confuse me. I'm tired of getting in trouble. I understand why people get angry, right? Because this movie is asking people to break a whole bunch of hard and fast rules, allegedly claiming that that's to show that the rules are good and we sexualize children too much. Like, if we sexualize children too much, why are you doing it? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. See what
You sort of covered a lot there.
Yeah.
So God, I don't know anybody in my sphere of things that was even approving of the movie either. Um,
Again, I'm
I
not
so
approving
like
of the movie. I'm thinking
no
I'm a hot mess, but
what I'm saying is like
yeah.
like what the movie was achieving was like, yeah, in things like the premiere that it did at the Sundance Festival.
It was
Like,
acclaimed, but weird
yeah,
shit goes through Sundance all the time.
yeah.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, it's like I in normie land,
yeah,
you know, with my chums, we watched the movie on Netflix. And we're like, why is this here?
right.
Like, what's this doing here? So
Did you
it's
know about the whole thing before you watched it? Like, did you watch it because of the scandal, or did it just kind of pop up?
I heard about the scandal before you
Oh,
mentioned it.
okay, okay.
So
So you'd heard about it when you watched it?
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. See, and this is the thing again, because TIFF happens in my hometown. I have seen some weird ass shit at film festivals. Like inappropriate, weird, gross, messed up, like what's going on? Why did anyone make this? And that's the problem with film festival audiences. They become numb to how a regular person sitting at home just looking for entertainment is gonna connect to this. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like I'm somebody that came from the Chan websites. Like
Right.
that's the culture. Like that's the culture that I came from.
Yeah.
And even I'm like, I don't like this.
Well,
Like
yeah,
even
but Chan has one firm rule, right? And Cuties breaks that one firm rule. You don't even go anywhere near CP, as they say on
right.
Chan boards. Now, okay, Chan violates that too because they like, anime fan service video games, which those girls range between 14 to 16 years old too.
Yeah.
But 11's young.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so for me, like being a Satanist as well, one of the biggest rules in Satanism is do not harm little children.
Right.
And so like
Yeah.
that
Yeah, it's interesting because and that, like I said, that secondary theme of religious fundamentalism being just as bad if not worse, I think has gotten really drowned out. Now,
mhm,
one, it's because I think that the left-leaning elite classes who see these at festivals are not going to touch any criticism of Islam, right? Never
yeah.
mind that these sorts of practices are things that even Islamic activists think need to go away like yesterday. The child marriage rate in Senegal is still around 31%. And that's under the age of 18. There are girls under the age of 13 who still get married, mainly in the villages. And let's face it, at that point, it's not marriage, it's allowing, and I got to be really careful with the language because YouTube gets upset about this stuff. It is allowing adults to choose when a child loses her childhood so that somebody else doesn't take her childhood from her. Not out of concern for the girl, out of concern that if she is not pure, no one's going to want to marry her. Right?
Right.
And one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is one that completely falls flat because again they didn't contextualize it. Did you figure out what was going on with that bedroom at the end of the hall where they took the doorknob off so they couldn't go in?
Wasn't it getting the bedroom ready for the wife
Yeah, it's
or
the
the new wife?
marital bed, right?
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be pure, like her. And that's why it was a princess bed. And one of the scenes I thought was the greatest in the movie were when these two innocent girls were rolling around eating the candy that was supposed to be there for the wedding night and like desecrating this shrine to young female virgin purity without even knowing it. I loved that scene because it was going yeah 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 to these, excuse my judgment, stupid religious practices that are ridiculously backward and don't treat women as human beings,
Right.
right? All of the pageantry, all of the princess stuff, all of the bribing kids with the gifts were all to make these young people think something is okay that's not okay. And I really like that the movie went there at all. I think, though, that because it's her background, and I think because of a lot of tensions, either like Lily Wachowski with The Matrix, she wasn't ready to go there yet, in full. She had to sort of allude to it, but not go there.
Yeah.
Or she missed it because she grew up in the director and writer herself grew up in a polygamous family, and she wasn't prepared to do the acts of subversion and rebellion that Ami is doing in her film. It's almost a vicarious thrill with her. And I think, like I said to you off air, this movie strikes me as therapy. And that's why. And that's, I think, a lot of the misses, a lot of the stuff that is just in bad taste to anybody with an objective perspective. That's why I think no one involved with it recognized what it was going to look like from the outside, right? The same way the Twilight novels are therapy. The same way we know now that Harry Potter, in a lot of ways, was therapy, right?
It was?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was J.K. Rowling working out all her dance monkey dance things about stuff. I mean, J.K. Rowling's not stable, right?
Okay, because I never read the books and I've only seen the first movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. we won't get into Harry Potter today because I've got a ton of people mad at me over Harry Potter right now. But
yeah,
you end up with these incredibly damaged women making art from a place that is not self-aware, and ironically, like the girls in this movie, they aren't aware of the full content of the messages they're sending out to the world. And that's why I'm trying to be kind, and I'm trying to give another perspective, even as I recognize objectively that it did go too far in places. And then the question is, okay, maybe it went deliberately too far. Is that okay? And I still come down on the side of, no, it's not okay. But then I have to decide, is it not okay because of the impact it has on the audience? Or is it not okay because it is inherently harming the performer? And the problem with women in Hollywood, and this is the thing I've been seeing hinted about online, but never quite said in a way that's clear, is that film has never given a shit whether its lead actresses are comfortable with what they're doing. You think
Quentin Tarantino.
Well, yeah, do that car stunt that's super dangerous, right? But even something as simple as Emilia Clarke in Game of Thrones, right? Like, you read about how grossed out and horrified and sick and upset Emilia Clarke and Jason Momoa were shooting those marital rape scenes.
Right.
No one gave a shit if they were okay. And that's the problem with film, right? You're asking adult performers to do things they are not okay with. We only get upset when it's children. I think we should start giving a shit more that any performer is doing something they don't feel right about. Because that comes through, right? Like, some of those scenes in early Game of Thrones were grotesque. I had the same reaction to those as I did to scenes in Cuties. When it's just this close-up of Emilia Clarke's boob for no reason, like you can see every dimple on her areola. It was clearly cold in that room. I'm like, that wasn't necessary. That's just a director lording his power over the actress. That's just him making because they had to stand there and zoom in and get close to get that shot. It's invasive as anything. You're standing there, you don't feel pretty at all. You feel exposed because it's freaking cold and you're uncomfortable. Because of the way you have to stand to look the way people want you to stand. And that is, I think, also why Hollywood and people like Tessa Thompson, who defended the movie really, really strongly as being powerful and beautiful, I think she is so in that, right? She doesn't see the wrong, because if she sees the wrong, She needs to think about all the wrongs that were committed against her. And that can be incredibly traumatizing, you know? So the thing I think that's interesting that this movie did is it really hit people's disgust triggers. That's sometimes important. The question is this inherently harmful to the kids involved? And I haven't heard an expert yet saying it is. Truth is, though, jury's out, right? Plenty of child stars have gone bad and did way less than this, right? Just the attention. And that's my big concern right now with the way this thing is blown up. The people who are like Ted Cruz is saying the DOJ should investigate Netflix for the movie, like the movie wasn't even made in the US. It was made in France. That's absurd, right? And the people sending death threats to the director and the people blowing all this stuff up and saying it's disgusting and making a whole pageant, not a single one of those people gives a shit about these children. Because if they gave a shit about these children, they would just let this thing die so they don't have to carry this with them their entire life. The way Jodie Foster had to, the way Brooke Shields had to, the way, my God, Ivanka Trump had to when she was in the middle of a big media thing when she was 9 years old because of her parents' divorce, right? And reporters were going up to her asking her what she thought about her father cheating on her mother, right? Even with boys, I mean, look at how screwed up Prince Harry is with the whole situation with his mother, right? That's what's really grossing me out about this whole thing. The people who are kicking up such a performative shitstorm over this movie, they don't care about those girls. They're drawing attention to themselves with their performative outrage, because if they really cared about the kids, they'd keep it calm, they'd keep it level, they discuss it like intellectuals, so it doesn't blow up and follow them their entire life like the girl really did put her vagina on the internet, right? And that phenomenon around the film, I think, says a lot more than the movie itself, because I'll repeat again, at the end of the day, the movie's not very good. Am I being too harsh on it?
Not harsh enough.
Okay.
I mean,
It's not very good.
I suppose what I'll say to that then, as far as like the consequences of making this film, are the performers harmed from making this film? To me, the answer is possibly.
Yeah.
And so with the answer being possibly, I can't really condone it.
And
And
that's
so
fair.
And so the reason why I can't, like, the further reasoning is that sure, maybe the child actors were okay at the time of what they were doing.
Yeah.
Maybe they agreed to it, but down the road, I'm not sure how they're going to take it when they look back at it. They could look back and think, God, what I did was pretty disgusting, and I wish I didn't do it.
See, that's the Linda Lovelace thing, right? Are you familiar with that? The porn
No.
star that did a Cronenberg film, and because she was a crossover phenomenon, she got really famous. And then Andrea Dworkin co-opted her as like an anti-porn thing, because it turned out she was coerced into it by like a boyfriend or a husband or something, and she became the face of Porn is Bad.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the problem is now we're not going to be able to separate the damage the process of making the film itself did to these kids from the scandal surrounding this film and what that did to them. And again, that's why I think the scandal isn't serving anybody, right? Because nothing happened until Netflix fucked up with the marketing. And Netflix fucked up huge with the marketing. The way I would have done the poster for Cuties in the US is the adult women twerking on the one side, the traditional stuff wedding on the other, and Ami looking up at both of them with a skip rope in her hand. Because it's the choice, right? Mm-hmm. That's what the movie's actually about, not a bunch of girls twerking. Like the amount of time they spend twerking in the movie is it's not like Dirty Dancing where most of the scenes revolve around dancing somehow. It's what, 20 minutes of a 94-minute film? It's almost an afterthought.
The twerking?
Yeah.
20 minutes of a 90-minute film?
Yeah, there wasn't that much dancing in it.
Well, then compare any like Toho Godzilla film. Like, how much of a Godzilla film is Godzilla fighting against the monster during that whole 90 minutes?
Well, it's like the last 30 minutes is just smash.
At least it's almost like it almost feels like an afterthought, doesn't it?
Well, that's effects budget though, right? Like, I'm comparing it more to a movie like Dirty Dancing or Hamilton, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine if Hamilton was 70 minutes of talking and 20 minutes of singing. It'd be like, this is not what I came for here. Or Dirty Dancing, they do 3 dance numbers in the whole thing. A standard musical has to have at least 6 songs. And so this was not really about, and the French poster is that scene where they're going shopping, which to me was a scene designed so they could get a movie photo, because it made no sense. Okay, yes, it's part of Ami's spiral and she stole and the whole thing, but that was the poster scene. It should have been cut. But the Netflix thing of them in those costumes, and they must have gone through and like chopped them out of other scenes and like repurposed them to get, because they never appear that way in the film. It's not a still frame. They Photoshop the crap out of that. It was misleading. The trailer was misleading. It's one of those things where when you market, say, a horror movie, you can't put the full-blown gore in an ad. You can only allude to it, right?
Kind of.
Well, you can't have it on TV, right? You can't have heads being chopped off in an ad that runs on television.
Yeah, it just depends on the audience, I suppose.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking like the standard one, like they put out on Netflix, the standard ad, right? Like they don't have Daenerys's boobs hanging out in promos for Game of Thrones. They have the sense not to do that. Well, that would be more honest advertising, right? Because HBO stands for "Hey, boobs out."
No, I don't care about the honesty. I just like it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a Prime Video ad for Hannah right now, right? Mm-hmm. They don't show her like snapping guys' necks and being all dirty and gross. It's just her, and it's like split, and it gives you a sense, but it doesn't give you the most shocking scene in the entire series in a trailer. I think Netflix, unlike the director herself, who was trying to tell a story and didn't realize what she was doing, ironically, much like the girls in the movie, I think Netflix was trying to shock people and they went overboard. And Netflix screwed up. I do think what Netflix did went over the line into immoral, because they stripped all the context out of this movie. And now the performers are kind of helpless. They just have to ride it out, because, I mean, Netflix isn't taking a lot of responsibility for it, right?
Yeah.
And that says a lot about Netflix's internal culture. I don't know if you've heard anything about Netflix's internal culture, but
no, I haven't.
They do meetings and they allow people to criticize each other until people break down in tears, because it makes you better. Mm-hmm. So you can understand how a corporation like that wouldn't exactly understand the feelings of their audience. And Netflix is being punished for this. Apparently, people are unsubscribing to Netflix. Now, for how long, we don't know.
Yeah.
But, they have been bitten by this, and I think deservedly so. Like, on the one hand, there'd be no talk about this movie if they hadn't done what they did. On the other hand, again, these are children. You don't market based on shock when the story stars an 11-year-old girl, a series of 11-year-old girls. Like, that's just stupid. And that was a whole collection of people not thinking. And that's where I think you get into the defense people have of this movie, which I don't agree with. But based on that, does it make any sense that I see their point, even though I don't agree with it, that this is something that happens in our world, and I guess we do need another movie to smack us in the face and tell us it's wrong? I don't agree. I think Hollywood is just filled with sociopaths, and we need a house cleaning. for people that actually have emotions.
I think I think there are better ways of being able to convey the message that this is wrong. I don't need a movie like Cuties to educate me that what I saw was wrong.
I agree with that, but a lot of the, very special, like all of Law and Order Special Victims Unit, most people don't need that show. It's not really designed to teach people that something is wrong. What these movies do, and I'm going to get a little tinfoil hatty here.
Oh boy.
For forgiveness in advance. What these movies do is, to a certain segment of the population, they reinforce that these things are wrong, and therefore you're a good person for being horrified by this. Back pats for everybody, right? It's almost the reverse Hamilton phenomenon of, hey, Black people are on Broadway, yay. And a friend of mine who's Asian, he saw Hamilton, he says, I didn't like it. I said, really, why not? He said, they whitewashed slavery. And he got dogpiled by theater fans about it,
Yeah.
right? Because every white girl Broadway belle from Beauty and the Beast wannabe was going, I'm speechless, and they thought they were woke, right?
Mhm.
But he was right. He was right. I couldn't get over watching Hamilton. The one thing I couldn't get over was Thomas Jefferson being played by a Black guy impersonating Prince. But we were not allowed the opinion that it whitewashed slavery among theater fans. It goes on Disney Plus, and people sitting at their homes on TV go, hold up, wait a minute. And that's exactly what happened here too. How it comes into someone's home, if it comes into someone's home or it happens in a theater, does matter. It does impact how somebody associates with it. Because us sitting in front of our TV, we're having this experience of this is coming into our house. You feel violated more than if you're sitting in a theater kind of prepared for what's coming.
Yeah.
It's also America's norms for this sort of thing are very different than French ones are. And that's another thing I'm trying to go, I don't want to say another culture's wrong, because then I would be hypocritical defending certain Japanese media. Because, Japanese media, sex more okay than North America, violence less okay than in North America, right? For teens, the norms are different.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I worked with some people who had to screen anime for school libraries for 8th graders, because the amount of sexual content that is considered appropriate for Japanese teenagers is way over the line here. But guns, you notice there's never guns in anything Japanese. They don't like it.
I mean, I see guns in anime all the time, though. I mean,
for teens with shonen stuff,
like God, like watching anime like Noir.
And Noir's adult though.
Yeah,
I'm talking shonen. You will never see a gun in Naruto. Like Attack on Titan was considered too much for Shonen Jump, right? But what did Naruto have it from the beginning? Sexy technique, right? There was naked ladies all over Naruto. So the cultural norms are different.
There actually was a point in Yu-Gi-Oh where 4Kids actually censored guns in the show, and had it looking like they were just pointing at where a kid.
Yeah, Team Rocket dressing in drag in Pokemon got censored in the West. So content that what's considered appropriate for kids to do varies around the world, and they have problems in France. I'm not going to say that their culture is superior or anything like that. They have serious problems with overt sexualization and treatment of women. And there are things, if you like Google the French media, there are politicians railing against, like their version of conservative politicians railing against 8-year-olds going to school in push-up bras. So they've got this phenomenon here that we like to claim doesn't happen here, but I remember when I was a teenager, they had to ban tube tops and like crop tops and stuff like that at our high school. If you wanted to wear a crop top like they're wearing in the movie, you had to wear a bodysuit underneath it. You could not have an exposed midriff. The school banned it.
Yeah.
And it apparently isn't like that everywhere, which shocked me. But I've asked a few people, and they're like, no, that happens here, and it's a cultural debate. So we have to kind of go, okay, if this is a cultural debate in France, if this is actually happening to kids in France, that's meaningful. Does that mean it was appropriate to release in North America? Not necessarily, right?
Right.
And I mean, I'm really torn between art has something to say, art challenges, and me being very anti-censorship as a rule. I think that when you start censoring things based on taste, the people who get hit the most are Black and brown people, but most minorities. Because, I mean, the other thing is this kind of dancing, not what they show in Cuties, but a lesser version of it is standard Afro-Caribbean dancing. Like I said, I learned it when I was 14 as part of school. We got to be careful not to go there and slap somewhat arbitrary norms about what's considered appropriate. Because as one person pointed out to me, think of how many little boys grabbed their crotch doing Michael Jackson impersonations and no one complained. Right? I mean, look at Menudo back in the day. Those boys, some of those boys were 13. The way we sexualize minor boys I mean, how old was Nick Carter, Joe McIntyre back in the day when they weren't 11, but they were pretty close. Aaron Carter was pretty young. And so when you start looking at what's okay for boys and what's okay for girls, the whole thing becomes much murkier. And that's the issue. There's no way to pull the thread without the whole thing just coming apart. And I'm trying to find a place, which is why I'm enjoying this conversation, where we can validate your response, because I think it's important, right? That nope, this is wrong, nope, over the line. I think that's totally valid. You know, I agree with you 100%. People need to be allowed to have that reaction. We also need space to discuss the elements of that reaction that are, to an extent, arbitrary, through things like, oh, when a boy grabs his crotch impersonating Michael Jackson, nobody went child porn, right? When in a sense, it's way closer to child porn that he's actually touching himself than anything those girls did.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on this.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why I hate the whole war behind it, because I get why people were like, nope. Like I said, I watched it so that a bunch of people didn't have to. I am very disturbed, I admit, by some of the defenses I've seen of this movie. I think they really get it wrong. And there is a lot of pedophilia in entertainment. That's the other uncomfortable thing. I mean, look at Bryan Singer, right? He got away with grooming underage boys for years. Kevin Spacey, right? Like, everybody knew they both liked them young. Everybody knew they were grooming teenagers. Nobody stopped it. So we can't take Hollywood's say-so on this, that this is okay.
Right.
That being said, we still go back to, we have that little boy in Pet Sematary who was running around with a scalpel and like killing people and simulating violence. And the uproar surrounding that wasn't half of what this is. And again, we have little boys acting far older than they are. I mean, even Michael Jackson, when he was a kid, he was emulating James Brown, right? Like, he was doing a bit of a reproduction as well. He was doing moves that he didn't really know what they meant. And I mean, there's the whole pageant culture in the US that is just fucking grotesque. that I don't know if you've seen, like the John Bonet thing, the toddlers in tiaras,
No, I didn't.
where they're doing. I remember I was at Chicago Comic-Con one year, and there was a kitty pageant in the same hotel that I was staying in because the convention was across the street. So I get in to the elevator, and I'm dressed like Poison Ivy from Batman, and there's this little like princess girl, like John Bonet type, and all the stuff. And then there was this little boy in like a Sheriff Woody type outfit, you know, from Toy Story. So he's a little cowboy, and the dad had the garment bag with the photo that, like, the makeup on this child was full blown like Joan Collins in Dynasty, and it was soft focus and it was airbrush and the hair was all that, and it said Misty in like cursive across it, because of course the child's name was Misty, right? And I'll never forget the stink eye the parents of those two children. They were doing the exact same thing I was, in that we were playing dress up, but they were giving me stink eye. And me, being the little shit that I am, looked right at them, gave them a big shit-eating grin. And I said, yeah, I'm big for my age. And it just intensified the stink eye, and I couldn't wait for those elevator doors to open. But these people were completely unaware that while they were looking at me like I was some slut, they were totally unaware of what they were doing to their kids. Right? And the messages they were sending. And that's why I keep stressing that as a girl, and you know, to be clear, I was somebody who competed in dance and taught in dance. And this is an ongoing fight in dance of what choreography is appropriate. Because the girls all come in and they want to emulate Cardi B and Rihanna, and not so much Megan Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj, because their lyrical content isn't like their marketing isn't quite so young. Nicki's very much an adult's rapper. Cardi B is the one I don't understand, because here's a woman who talks openly about having all this plastic surgery and being an ex-stripper, and 12-year-olds are listening to her. And I'm all good with somebody being open about their past, but there is a disconnect there, right? And so we've got a girl who loves Cardi B. How do you tell that girl what Cardi B does is morally wrong? That's difficult, right? Like, how do you do that? How do you not stomp on what she likes? Because what happened to us when we were in school, when they banned tube tops, is us mouthy little hood chicks went, yeah, but you let the boys walk around in the basketball tank tops and we can see their chests through it. Why don't they have to cover up and wear a t-shirt under the tank top? And we were just told, because it's different, because it's not the same.
I couldn't wear tank tops.
Yeah, I went to a predominantly black high school, a black majority high school. So basketball was big. And in the summer, I think part of the reason they let them do it is teenage boys tend to get a little stinky. So anything that makes them sweat less was a good thing. But we were just told, too bad, deal with the double standard. Of course, you feel like you're treated unfairly. And so we got to be careful in how outraged we are, simply because we do treat the sexuality of preteen boys, even the movie, even Cuties itself does it very differently. That 14-year-old boy is being sexually harassed. There's no way around it, right? He's being sexually harassed. It's played for laughs. That bothered me. And I don't know if I'm being too sensitive about it because I'm trying to be fair, but I'm sitting here going, why is nobody complaining about, you're worried about protecting these darling angels, but this 14-year-old who had a bunch of 11-year-olds go into the men's room to take a picture of his dick and very little happened other than he said, "You get away, you're gross." Why are we more worried about that?
I agree.
You know, and this is a rabbit hole I start going down to. Why was it okay that Ricky Martin was out there shaking his ass when he was 13 years old, or 12, I think he was, when he started Menudo? Nick Carter, Justin Timberlake was a kid when he started. And you look him, Joe McIntyre, they were up doing the pelvic thrusts with the boys who were 4 to 5 years older than them. And everybody was fine with it. Everybody was like, oh, the girl screamed and all that stuff. And, you know, of course, it turns out Nick Carter was abused and, you know, these boys were being taken advantage of and all that stuff. But nobody complained about the content itself. Everybody thinks, for whatever reason, that boys are more resilient in that regard. Nobody thinks about what's going to happen to these boys with the attention. What's going to happen to these boys when they grow up and recognize the sexual connotations of what they were doing. We don't do this with boys. And I think we need to start. But again, am I being too sensitive? You know, I hate to make you speak for all of manhood here. And it's a sizable manhood. But,
Look,
you know, yeah.
Look. If you've seen the chest hair, then you will understand that I can speak for the entire manhood.
There you go. I mean, you got the beard. You're obviously fully a man. But you know what? Am I overthinking this? Am I speaking on behalf of men? Have I gotten anything wrong? Because that's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to speak on behalf of men because I'm not one.
I mean, God. See, I was actually, I grew up with having a lot of that stuff out of my sight when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was more about what Christian rock bands I was listening to. Aaron Carter was like a kid that I would see like in commercials
and you
in
just
Nickelodeon.
Wanted to punch. Yeah.
Well, like I was indifferent like to him. Like, yeah. I mean, for me back then, like I didn't know much for music because all I had was the Christian rock. And so, I didn't really have that whole world of like sexual freedom opening for me until I was getting into my teenage years at the very least, getting into certain hip hop and learning about different terminology. So it was like being late to the party, but in a way, I do think that kind of helped me, but also I also did not have sex ed when I was a kid.
Wow. None.
Do you want to know how I learned how sex works? Porn.
See, I keep hearing that, and this is mind-blowing to me because I grew up in the age of AIDS, right? So we were given condoms when we were 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
Because the whole thinking back then was get them before somebody puts shit in their head. So every time someone says, I had no sex ed, you saw me, I kind of went, like, how does that happen? And it's sort of the same thing, right? Like you had a similar journey to what Ami does in the movie. Nobody taught you, so you sought it out.
Yeah.
And what happened? Not to pry too much.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
What happened when you started that way and then you had to unlearn that? Like
to unlearn what exactly?
Well, how did you figure out that's not all the like prep and all the warm up and all that stuff that they do off camera in porn? That's stuff you kind of have to do. Like it doesn't just glide in there that way in real life, so to speak. Like how did you figure out that's not what it's really like?
I got to be honest. I don't think I would be as. I don't think I would have been as good of a lover if I did not have porn.
Right.
That like as much as people like to tell me like that's not real, it's all fake. I actually learned how to do things from it.
So you were watching fairly decent porn.
I guess so.
Right.
Like I wasn't watching like the overly scripted porno flicks. To me, like I was just watching like scenes of two people doing it, and there was no real storyline to it. It was just watching the act.
Right.
So maybe it was the type I was watching. I don't know.
It sounds like you got lucky because I've known other people who are like, especially the anal stuff. They're like, no, there's prep involved there. You don't just do it that way. We actually have panels at the local anime convention where some gay guys do a panel telling girls who are big into yaoi how gay sex actually works. because they're sick of the shitty fan fiction that depicts it in a negative way. And these things go on for hours because, I mean, the girls just, eat it all up. And again, these girls are young, right? Like anime cons, a lot of minors there, but they'd rather be like, no, it's not like that. And no, you can't have sex like a heterosexual couple. Like, no, that's not it. And it's interesting. It's interesting to hear that because I am not anti-porn. I don't think porn is the big damaging cultural thing that they want to believe. I spent many years of my career interviewing porn stars. For people who have never heard of me before, never heard me speak, I did a late night show in Canada where we were internationally syndicated. The only talent that was known internationally was internet porn stars, because people could go to their internet and find out exactly who this woman was. You didn't have to see a movie. You didn't have to know who their music were. Nothing was global the way it was now. And these women were phenomenal. They were smart. They were business savvy. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I go back and I'd interview porn stars again in a heartbeat. It's way better than porn stars, game dev, Hollywood, music publicists are the friggin' worst. Like, oh my God, they're the worst.
Because I used to interview bands.
Yeah. Isn't it fucking awful?
I loved it.
Really? Okay,
I only
you were
had
doing
one,
rock though.
Well, I only had one bad interview though. That was with OTEP. That was it.
Really?
Yeah, OTEP was horrible.
See, all the bands I like are raging assholes. Ruined the Smashing Pumpkins for me, ruined the Red Hot Chili Peppers for me, and now OTEP. They were jerks, eh?
I think OTEP hated me because I'm a guy.
Really?
Yeah, she treats men like shit.
Real? So that's like real. That's not an act.
It is real.
My streak continues.
Look, I've got plenty of musicians I can toss your way anyway. Yeah. But no, I mean, when it comes to anal, I don't give a shit either. Right. So, but
yeah, no, it's interesting though. But that's what I mean about those arbitrary lines, right?
See, I didn't even have to like unlearn much either.
That's
like,
interesting.
When it came to losing my virginity, all I had to do was wait.
Okay.
So, and it just happened with me being at the right place at the right time and having the right person, and it was like, it's something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life.
But that's because you weren't in a hurry to do it, right?
Well, really, like, yes and no. It was like, I was 17 years old. I wanted to hurry up and like get it done, get it over with, because everybody's bad when they do it for the first time.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so like once it happened, it's like, poof.
Right.
That was great.
Right. We're done. Next. Yeah. That's interesting. Because I mean, that's the thing. I see so many kids in a big rush to grow up. I think video games saved me from that, because that's what I had to do. That was what my identity was based on. I talked to boys about video games. I didn't need to get attention in the ways like the girls in this movie do, but I saw girls doing it, right? Like I saw girls try, like I said, it's a shortcut to adulthood, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm like, I think the defenders of the movie are right. We got to talk about this stuff. I don't think this is a good vehicle to do it, just because it was so sloppy and so all over the place and tried to do too much. And by the end, the focus wasn't really on the girls. It was about the reactions of all the adults around them, which to me was exactly what it should not have been. Why do I care if the people surrounding Ami and her friends are disgusted by their behavior? I want to know how Ami and her friends feel about their behavior. And I just feel like they were shamed into what we consider normal, as opposed to making the choice for themselves, right? And that's the issue I have with the film, which, like I said, was not the issue I have with anything else. And I think part of the reason I wasn't bothered the same way, I was bothered, but it was like bothered and it goes in a box and it leaves. And this is going to sound totally strange. You were bothered because you come from Chan stuff and that's even not okay. I think wasn't bothered because I've spent so many years not bothered, but bothered at the same time. I've spent so many years with people trying to get a rise out of me that almost nothing works anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And so again, it's good to have conversations like this because it's woman on the internet syndrome, right? You have to get tough, you have to be anesthetized, you have to be prepared for the dick pics and the things they think are going to shock you, and tub girl and women squirting paint out various orifices and things like that. They try to get to you. And I had the same reaction to this movie that I had to that, is this is trying to get to me. It's not going to get to me. Right?
Yeah.
But again, for the record, because I know people are going to read into what I'm saying, I completely validate the people who were legitimately disturbed. It is disturbing content. I don't think it's on the line. I think it's over the line.
Well, I mean, and not even the Chan stuff. Like I am I'm a huge death metal fan, and
Yeah.
I also love grindcore, but and that even has gore grind and porno grind, where like the album art is actually all part of the fun too.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to make it as grotesque as
Right.
you possibly can. Like one of my favorite porno grind songs was from Spasm, "Beautiful Human Toilet."
Right.
And it's
it is what it is, right?
you know, it's like, you know, if you can get a fan, like a fan of that stuff like myself, to be disturbed and not okay with something, then okay, well, maybe let's look like we can have these discussions.
Yeah.
I think we could just have these discussions without the movie happening.
I agree. I mean, I thought, have you seen Rammstein's video for Rosenrot?
Oh, I've seen all of them.
Okay, you know the one that got banned because it is a priest abusing a little girl.
Yeah, you're talking like my second favorite band.
Yeah,
like,
see,
we're talking about a band that made a porno for one of their music videos.
yeah. What, Du hast?
No, Pussy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, because that video, Rosenrot, was banned in the music station I used to work for. And we did it was a Mountain Dew promo where, because it was after midnight, we could play Guar, we could play like all the bands we weren't allowed to play every other time. And I'm like, Rammstein, the first band out of my mouth was Rammstein, because I think they get robbed. I think their music's brilliant. I think their videos are brilliant. They would not let us play Rosenrot even after midnight. And I think that video is so well done and so tasteful and covers a lot of the same themes, but everything's implied, right? Nothing happens to that girl. It's all subtext. They let us, you know, that alternative version of Du hast, where it's just a bunch of oiled up guys writhing around and it's like kind of a mosh pit, kind of an orgy. That's what they let us play instead of Rosenrot.
Well, they also had a song banned as well in Germany.
Well, they were banned outright. The whole band, like everything was banned outright for a while.
Well, I mean, specifically the song Ich tu dir weh.
Yes. Yeah. Because of the content.
Yeah.
And we look, and there's a certain, like, we look at and go like, what's wrong with that? Right. But in Germany, different standards, right? The world does. But Rammstein was the band that really made me question norms and offense and harm, and really made me think critically every time one of these things comes up, because I thought, first of all, their music's good, but it's smart too, right? Like, it's not just a sound. It's not just that great growl, that baritone growl. It's smart music, right? Their videos are brilliant, and they're like this horrible, evil band. They're not. They're everything they talk about in their music. They're opposing, right? They're bringing it out into the light to oppose these practices. And that's why I'm like, okay, they're doing much more successfully what Cuties claims to be doing, but they got in trouble for it too, and they got banned in places for it too. And so I'm torn, because I thought it was wrong with Rammstein. So who the hell am I to possibly make the same mistake with something else, right? I think the best thing people can do is vote with their wallets. And I'm glad people are actually taking the plunge and canceling their Netflix accounts, because that's the only thing Netflix will listen to.
Well, and Rammstein has never had to use children to convey the messages that they do in the first place.
Well, that's why they flagged Rosenrot, because there was a girl and a boy in it. 'Cause, you know, it was like that. It was Hansel and Gretel with a priest.
Yeah.
And so they were just like, no, there's kids in it. I'm like, but you don't see anything, but there's kids in it. It's clearly sexual abuse, but you don't see anything. You can't. But overtly sexual, like naked men, oh, that's okay. Well, okay, the gay boys at home are going to be quite happy about this, but I don't think you realize that to a TV viewer, that's more overt than, you know, a kid is going to watch Rosenrot and not know what's going on. You know, and that, I mean, that's why I'm so hesitant to be pitchforks, because it's happened to so many musical acts, and I thought it was wrong. I almost feel like I lack the cultural, and this is selling myself short, because in a lot of ways I grew up in that dance culture where I saw girls go on stage and have, you know, our teachers turn up their nose at the choreography and say that's too sexual. They'd say flat out, that's too sexual. Meanwhile, I was 14 years old and I developed early, so I was being put in productions of Guys and Dolls with cleavage popping out to here. I was a C cup by the time I was 14. So it seemed kind of arbitrary to me. And after a while, I got the sense that the more Black the sexuality was in terms of associated with Black people, the more disgusting it was treated as. And that's the other thing we have to be kind of careful with Cuties too, right?
Yeah.
Because it's totally acceptable to have a bunch of 8-year-olds do a shimmy shake, right? Because there's nothing to move at 8. But let's face it, when an adult woman does it, like YouTube won't let me. I got to cover myself up to do that movement. That's a sexualized gesture when an adult does it. We teach it to 8-year-olds. Where's the line, right? Because it's below the waist, it's considered worse. This was the huge challenge we had as dance teachers. And what we ended up doing is hip shake side to side was okay. One kind of like pop out was okay. No up and down movement. Like you do not simulate like the hip thrust. No hip thrust, as you could bend at the knees. You could bounce at the knees, which is one bodily movement away from a twerk. But it was an important one, right?
Right.
But
right.
then, of course, we'd compete against groups that did the twerking and they do better than us. Because the judges there happen to be kind of perverts. So
Okay.
it was US competition. The British competitions, no, none of that went on. It was the US run competitions that were very age appropriate, because it was all replication of culture, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the thing. A lot of people aren't aware with these ongoing fights within dance. So you're going, oh my God. And I mean, I remember doing competitions and girls' dads were in the change room. And this was by the time I was like 15 years old. So it was a different thing. There was something to see there. And it was an awkward thing of, who's going to tell this guy he has to leave? And at the end of the day, no one did. We had to just change with a strange man, because we were on in 3 to 4 numbers. We needed to do a complete costume change, and we couldn't be late. That's what happens in the dance world. You end up becoming.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Oh, this happened more than once, because you're changing in classrooms in a US high school, right?
Yeah.
And you're scheduled for one number, and then you're in another category for a different type of dance. And sometimes scheduling goes wonky, and you only have 8 to 12 minutes to change. And they're like, well, it's good training for when you go do this professionally, because those quick changes do happen. And so you go in there, and there's somebody's dad standing there, and you're told, block him out. Just go. It's on him. It's not you. Change, go. Because that happens in theater too, right? If you're ever backstage at anything, there's nudity all over the place. And so, like, these are the sorts of things that if you're not in the world, like you said, you had no idea. But that was wrong. You know, I look back on that now, that was wrong. Somebody should have asked that guy to leave.
Right. Right.
So I still I would still like to believe we live in a world where we don't need a highly controversial movie to tell us this stuff, but in another way, we still do. And I think what seems to shock a lot of people, not you don't seem to have this issue. Some people are in denial that 11-year-old girls will do this if you let them. Left to their own devices, they'll do this. A lot of people don't want to believe their little angels will, but no, left to their own devices. Troubled 11-year-olds like this absolutely will. And I'll say again, and this is kind of my final-ish thought about this, what I loved about the movie, on top of all the things I didn't like, what I loved about the movie is that it showed that a fundamentalist religious upbringing made this little girl super vulnerable to hypersexuality, right? She was raised with no boundaries, so she didn't know why it was wrong. Because here's dad bringing home a new wife, right? Even though mom's crying, she's not with it. Why not take a picture of my vagina and put it on the internet? I'm not worth anything. My body doesn't mean anything. Some guy's going to own me in 2 years. Who the fuck cares? I would have liked to have seen a movie that really explored that, like that headspace. That would have been brilliant. And they missed the moment. And that's why I find it so frustrating. Because that would have said something. But again, it's Islam. I don't think they were ready to go there.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. And it's really not Islam. It's tribal stuff. It's not in the Quran. It's just a relic of the way, you know, the priest robes in Catholicism are a relic of medieval times, like 13th century type stuff. Yeah, it's not. It hasn't moved forward. It's nothing in the religious text. So yeah. Now that I've gotten in trouble with pretty much everybody, that was an interesting discussion. Do you have anything to add, like a final word?
It's the Halloween season. You know, I think that
God, it is.
I think that there are better ways of using the time than to be jumping into the discussions, because like I did this to challenge myself, and like I'm not challenging myself by listening to people like Blair White or Dankula or like, and at the same time, like I don't like I got to be able to make sure that I tighten my arguments in the way that I'm discussing things. So that's really what this exercise was for me. I think that if you're feeling like I am with this movie, then you've got other things you can do.
Yeah.
If you want to get rid of your Netflix subscription, join me in watching movies on Shudder. Like you've got the like original Halloween movies. You've got Chopping
look
Mall.
This up. I've never heard of the service before you mentioned it.
It's like $6 or $7 per month for it, and it's just a shitload of horror films. Like you remember the movie Creepshow?
Yeah,
that's a series now.
Yes, that's right. Can you believe they're remaking Candyman?
I can. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like that was such a product of its time to me, the Candyman movie. I can't believe they're remaking it. I'm kind of thrown off. You know what is good on Netflix if you're not canceling is Warrior Nun.
I don't know that one.
Does a lot of the same themes. Girls are a little bit older, but does it better. And it's more action oriented. So they kick stuff. But it's surprisingly good for the name.
Yeah.
The name makes it sound like it should be crap. It's actually surprisingly good, and that's on Netflix too. Like I think it's also important not just to again, we watch this stuff so other people don't have to. They can kind of figure out what's going on without subjecting themselves to what we went through. But I think it's also important to support content that actually does it better, right? Like if you want to do good content by young girls, and the showrunner, he's a Canadian guy, he's a really nice guy. For everything I've heard, it was a very positive experience for everybody involved. So that's important too, right? Like what happens behind the scenes is important too. So Warrior Nun on Netflix, I recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I invite the listeners to talk to me about horror films. Do that instead.
Yeah, they can't be less horrifying than what we had to watch. And my computer's yelling at me. All right. We wrapping there?
Yep.
All right. Okay. I'll